are going to do in their literacy class is how strong they are in oral literacy and how able they are to understand phonological awareness, decode, and otherwise decoding. So knowing what the sounds are, knowing how they're grouped, knowing how to decode them, and sort of like ideas with morphology plus oral language will equal better outcomes in the classroom if they've had more exposure to more language and vocabulary.
I mean, I read the definition of decoding, but I really don't know what it is.
Break it down for you.
Because I have never taught and I've never learned in elementary school. When I came from Africa, I went straight to middle school and I was in ESL. So I've never had the fundamental foundation that a lot of kids have in elementary. So I have never had the firsthand experience on it.
Absolutely. I already told you, you learned English like a boss, okay? So you didn't have to know the nuanced, okay, now I'm doing phonological awareness. Well, let's take a look at this word. Let's take a look at the word predictors. What if you didn't know, if you were going to, let's say for instance, teach this slide to a high school seniors class that was going to go into help read books for kids, I don't know, at an elementary. And they didn't know, well, what do predictors mean? What is predictor? Okay, so, well, how can we decode the word predictor? What words are within the word? So what does pre mean? And what else can we gather from what's in the words, how we break down the words, the way that we know some words have prefixes, suffixes, affixes that carry sort of components of meaning that change a word's definition or meaning. Knowing those things, that is decoding. And we teach them these skills and how to do this. So their oral language, their ability in their everyday capacity to speak and what they've heard, plus what we teach them as far as phonological awareness, decoding skills, morphology, that is the greatest predictor of how well they're going to do. Because we can't move on to comprehension skills if the children don't know how to decode and we're in that instructional. The only reason the instructional area works when we're teaching reading is because we also teach them decoding skills and ways to work through those 3 to 5 words that they might not understand so that they can get them or ask for explanation, whatnot, to sort of get more in their word bank. But I'll show you more with the next slide.
Okay.
So they interact with language in these formats. Their ability to respond and play with sounds increases as we play with them. We practice with them ma in this very basic way, but sometimes that basic way still works really great for teaching phonetics and the way that you play with phoneme groups and chunks together, which we call syllables, and the way that those build words, like segmenting the words, segmenting syllables. And I'll show you some activities that would help explain how a teacher would use them in a classroom. So maybe, because they're not just going to show you or ask you maybe about phonological awareness, it might be an activity in which the teacher is focusing on phonological awareness, and they might ask you, why might she be doing this? Like, what is the point of focusing in this way? But research shows, and that's why everything sort of is going towards the science of teaching reading, which I'm very excited about, proven that in order for students to acquire this awareness in the early stages, we have to be able to detect larger phonological units, which are words and syllables that we can play around with, bigger chunks that we can play around with and learn about later. As their awareness deepens, they're able to manipulate small chunks into big chunks, which you call phonemes. And I'll show you an example of exactly the type of like very basic chunking that we would do for like a first grade class, working on grouping and manipulating word parts or units of sound. phonological awareness and the alphabetic principle. So in the early stages, children are able to detect larger phonological words such as units, such as words and syllables. So once they get older, they know that we're not just saying, making sounds like mama. They know that mother means something. Even though they can't read it, they know what mother means. Words have meaning. And words and syllables, as we break it down for them, become more palatable as we make the different connections in their brains.
So which one, I'm sorry to interrupt. Which one comes first? Phonology, alphabet principle, phonological awareness. Which one comes first when the kids are learning? I would say it's alphabet principle. They need to identify the letter and the sound before they do phonology awareness. That's what I was thinking, but it goes either way. So I'm confused on depending on the strategies.
It depends on the curriculum. Some curriculums want you to focus on the sound. So for instance, my daughter was in kinder this year, and so it was great. I was doing science of teaching reading. I was able to see whether these things work or not in live time. But personally, I believe it's better to teach the phoneme the way that it sounds, because they already make those sounds with their mouths while they're talking. So they know the ma sounds. So this word is ma. Makes So it's not like m, it's This says mom. So it just depends on the curriculum that is chosen, but typically they understand and know phonemes before they will know graphemes, which is the picture representation.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess that those are the things I was kind of more confused, because there will be a question be like, a kindergartner are doing out loud, teachers doing out loud reading for them, and what is the next activity for the students to interact with the reading, and they'll be like decoding alphabet principle, and then phonology awareness, and decode. It's sort of like I have to figure out which one it is, and it becomes very narrow to that specific scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. The reason that science of teaching reading works, and I think the reason why I like the teaching the alphabet, if you will, in phonemes, I think it's because they already have that prior knowledge of the way that things sound, and so that gives them a one-up on it, instead of teaching them two different things. You're sort of like connecting one thing that they know to something new, and having the students be able to manipulate the units of sound, and then the parts of the different words is so beneficial to them later on. It just makes them more assertive in their abilities to decode later on, and competent readers, honestly, just better, stronger readers. So print and awareness and letter knowledge must also be developed through planned, playful activities that engage children in noticing letters in their classmates' names, and in their names. So that's really important, that when you do print awareness, that you don't do it sort of like without tying it to something in the real world to them. So they're all learning about print awareness in kindergarten, right? And what letters make up words.
So what does the real world mean for the kindergartners?
Themselves. For kindergarten, it means themselves. It means everybody in their classroom. It might mean their mom and dad and immediate family. Like for them, that's the real world. For high school students, the real world is like everything in society. What's happening in the news might be connecting it to the real world, but also connecting it to them, connecting it to their family, connecting it to issues or conflicts that are common in their age group is connecting it to the real world for them. So if they have difficulties, if you're teaching a group of seniors, then something about different universities might be something that is real world for them, because they might be going to the university very soon.
Right.
But for seventh graders, it might not resonate as well as with, for instance, someone who's a junior or a senior in high school.
Okay. I'm
So,
sorry, I'm trying to take pictures of a question so I can slide later on.
oh, okay, I can just send this to you.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, I can send this to you. So as their language abilities increase, their understanding of what they read aloud, of what they're read aloud to them also understands, which is why it's so important. And I'm going to start this initiative. I just don't know how to do it, where I want to go to different elementaries and actually teach parents how to read to their children at night, because I've always read to my children as an English teacher, because I've always been an English teacher. So I have always done all of the things that you should be doing even before they know what words are. Just looking at the pictures. Do they look happy? What's happening here? Oh, what does her face say to you? And they look at the face and they're like, she looks angry. How can you tell? And getting them to say, because her forehead is smushed forward. Just getting them to talk about the things that they're seeing and the story bits help them understand the story, and sort of builds that oral language comprehension, their ability to understand social emotional awareness, even through the print and the storytelling. And you're able to reinforce and break down those ideas that you want for them to do, to stop and think about stuff like, why do you think she would do that? And ask questions. If someone gets upset, have them think about, well, why would someone get upset and break their pencil, their favorite pencil?
So
You know,
do they learn inferencing and evaluation in that early age, or they reasoning especially? Do they learn it at
they
that
practice
age?
with it. Yeah, sure. They practice with what they have the ability to
Okay.
inference with. So, I mean, if they have ever felt upset, or have ever felt lonely, or those things that they can relate to in the stories, they definitely will. And infer why someone might feel that way. Well, maybe her friend was mad at her, or maybe she got in trouble at her house, you know. So their examples and their inferencing on why the character might feel a certain way is going to be on their level, but certainly they can. And it's important to get them to think about those things and to train their brain whenever they're engaging with the story to say, why, what's happening, this reminds me of this, what is going on in this picture, what predictions, what do I think might happen next based on what we just read. Let's go back and think about these things. Just getting them into the idea of a reading is not just merely saying the words on a page and turning them as soon as you say them. Everything in a book is carefully crafted. The words that are put on each page, the illustrations. So like getting time to be thoughtful with a book, it takes about 10 minutes to go through it all the way. You know, you're kind of exhausted by the end of it, because you've done a lot of work, but the kids have done a lot of work themselves, answering back and participating. And they love that type of reading so much more than the other kind. It's sort of like a double-edged sword, because they'll bring you more and be like, do this one next. And it's like, you're exhausted because it was just 10 minutes and you gave a mini lesson, but the children are all better for that engagement.
So do they act out the story lines, or I mean they
That's
were
an excellent way to check for understanding, especially at that early child.
okay, because there were a couple of questions like that,
Absolutely. But you
and I
can't
was
use it with kindergartners because they're not self-regulated enough to sort of create the retelling of something. But I would say first and second graders should start to dabble in it, especially with smaller stories, because as we get older, we ask them to do it with ever more complex ideas.
okay.
And so getting them to just sort of practice encapsulating the important parts of a story and engaging in that, even the presentation of that, is getting them to get used to being in front of people and just expressing ideas. We have far too many students, parents, teachers who are uncomfortable with presenting ideas and speaking in front of large groups of people or even a handful of strangers. They simply won't do it. And that really is just a practice thing, and feeling comfortable with the things that you're talking about. But mostly it's a practice thing. And if we start at an early age, getting them to sort of retell, and we check for understanding in that way, not only do the other children who are watching love it, but it's a fun activity for them to show you what they know.
Yeah, because I mean, my daughter, when she was younger, she was very, you know, acting out and singing and, you know, be very social butterfly. She wanted to be, you know, she was pleasing people, pleasing her teachers, her friends. And so she would be very out loud and do everything. But as older she got, she just kind of like in her own cocoon, doesn't want to go, and she's shy to talk to people and strangers. And it's kind of sad because I'm like, you know, she used to be so social and
Yeah.
she's completely introverted. So I guess that's different for kids.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different for everyone, but I'm telling you, it's natural for everyone. There's so many people who have difficulties with speaking, and they might have been very outgoing before social pressures made them feel like I should feel some type of way about it. You know, being a woman of color is difficult, and there are many times when people have asked me politely and impolitely to sort of like be quiet. Even when I was getting my bachelor's, I had another classmate say like, stop asking questions already, like we want to get out of here. And I'm like, I'm trying to learn.
Learn,
Like,
exactly.
like,
You want to leave, then leave. I've
excuse
been
me,
there.
nobody's holding you here, and I paid just as much as you did, and nobody tells me how many questions I can ask. It was an advanced grammar class, okay? I had many questions. So, but that's just, and some people will say, oh, maybe I won't say anything, ask questions anymore. But for me, and because of the way I was raised, I was like, no, this will not fly. And if you're ready to go, you're certainly welcome to leave.
Right.
But in any event, that might be a thing. You know, you never know. It's the social pressures are very much there. So phonological awareness develops from sensitivity to large units of sound like words and syllables to sensitivity of smaller ones like individual phonemes, like even the different grapheme has two different sounds, right? The different print A makes two different sounds. E in a word can make, you know, different sounds. So being able for the students to detect and manipulate those sounds and know when they're appropriate or not is, you know, tantamount to them getting that. So task difficulty is another important consideration. This is important consideration for everyone when they're doing this, because you don't want to make it too difficult for your age group.
Mm-hmm.
Easier task includes identification and blending. So like
Mm-hmm.
up, right? So and if you do a little bit more challenging ones, you would do segmenting, deletion, substitution. Segmenting means putting the word in, segmenting it into its parts. It's
Yeah,
word.
I had quite a few questions about what do you call, sorry, I'm interrupting while you're talking because I'm remembering things.
Oh, please, whenever
Um,
you remember, you interject.
Structural analysis and contextual analysis. I know that's kind of different. Maybe we can talk about it later, but this kind of triggered my memory of that.
No, not at all. Contextual context. And what was the other that you mentioned?